and welcome to Get to Know, a candidate interview program produced by Murchland Broadcasting. I'm David Murchland. Our goal is simple: to give voters the opportunity to hear directly from the candidates seeking public office. During this conversation, we'll learn about our guest's background, experience, priorities, and vision for serving the people of the Wisconsin's 7th Congressional District. Welcome to the studio today.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me. I love what the purpose is.
Yeah. So before we get into the questions, let's get to know you a little bit. Where you're from, what you like to do from day to day. Let's hear all about you.
Well, thank you so much. So Ginger Murray is my name. My maiden name was Yazjeski. Folks like to know that I'm from the district. I was born in Eau Claire, so Northwoods, but not in the district. But we soon thereafter moved to Rhinelander. Dad worked at the paper mill. Mom had a series of jobs, including postal service. Then my dad got a job for Job Corps, which prompted us to move to Blackwell, which is also in Forest County. So I went to school in Wabeno. I had a class of 36 kids. I know what it's like to be educated in a small school. I know what it's like to see the teachers who are truly invested in their students. It was amazing how many things those teachers were willing to do to support students. One of the things that I'm most proud of from when I was in school was that I asked Mrs. Volk if we could have a mock trial team. And we'll talk about how important that became. When I competed against Rhinelander, and I don't know what you know about Rhinelander, but Rhinelander always won the national mock trial championship. And so that's who I got to compete against. And Judge Kinney, after my competition, he said to me, "Kiddo, if you don't go to law school, you're really missing out on a great opportunity." We'll talk more about that later. But I did end up going to UW-Madison. Initially, I started studying political science, but the first class that I went to, all they talked about was Watergate. And I just thought, right? I'm like, that is corruption at its core. Why is this an introduction into poli-sci? Soon thereafter, I changed my major to behavioral science and law. I graduated in that field with a certificate in criminal justice. I went to law school, and when I came back, I returned to Forest County. When you're a professional in a small town, they don't have a lot of that professionals. So I ended up being the city attorney for Crandon. That's an elected position. Town attorney for Leona. Family court commissioner. So the judge who appointed me to do guardian ad litem work, representing the best interest of children, appreciated the commitment I had for the advocacy for the best interest of children. And so he promoted me to family court commissioner, where I was then presiding over cases, issuing decisions in the best interest of children. And then the two judges in Oneida County also appointed me as their family court commissioner. I now own my own law firm. It's called Your Family Law Center, not Ginger and Associates. It's about the people that I represent. You ask, what kind of things do I do in my day-to-day life? For 23 years, I was a parent. So my youngest one is 23. But the thing that I did that I think exemplifies who I am is I ended up doing an Ironman. Yeah. It started with swimming across Silver Lake, swimming across Lake Mendota. I just enjoyed conquering the distance across lakes. And that led to doing sprint triathlons and ultimately an Ironman. And while I am not a model of physical fitness, a lot of it has to do with determination. And I think that helps to explain to folks a lot about my character.
Sure. So my next question is, why are you running for Congress now?
Yes. And I hear that as two questions. Why am I running for Congress? And why am I running for Congress now? And so I'm going to go with the second part of that. I have had an interest in politics ever since I started going to UW-Madison. That first class really turned me off. In 2000, I was approached by Senator Roger Bresky and then ultimately other senators, Dave Obey, who was the congressman, Herb Cole, Russ Feingold. They wanted me to run against Lorraine Cerati for the 36th District Assembly. When Roger came to the House and asked me about the case I was prosecuting with Lorraine for her OWI, I said, Roger, I don't give deals on OWIs. If you got an OWI from one of my officers, you were really, in violation of the law. And he said, no, we want you to recuse yourself to run. And I said, well, I'm getting married on September 9th. And he said, well, we're not going to run it with Murray. It's got to be Yazjeski and Bresky. We're going to run it that way. And I said, well, as long as you understand I'm getting married, I'm going to talk to Jason and see if he's okay with that. And I'll tell you, I didn't win, but I've been married for 27 years, and I didn't want to stay in politics once we became parents. It wasn't easy to become parents. It took us longer than expected. I had a troubled pregnancy, and Jason and I agreed that while we were parents, we were not going to be, I would not be in politics until after the kids grew up. And so it was like the trifecta. My kids are adults. I'm at the peak of my career, and this position allows me to keep my employees employed while I run for this position. The real thing that motivated me is my 2 adult children are girls, and neither one of them want to have children. And I'm all about reproductive freedom and choice, as long as it's for the right reasons. My kiddos don't want to have children because my environmental scientist thinks Mother Nature is not able to sustain multiple generations. And my other child has many reasons, but one of them is that it's not affordable. And so that's very motivating for me.
Sure. We're gonna move on through the questions here. What is one life experience that shaped how you see public service?
One life experience that has shaped how I see public service. There's so many to choose from. I'm going to go with one of my favorites to talk about. My granny was the chair of the Democratic Party in Forest County, and her sister was the chair of the Republican Party in the neighboring county. And they were ladies who were setting the tone for what was happening in each of their communities, and they were opposed in their political positions. But that never impacted their ability to play cards on Friday and sip their Manhattans. And I think we need to get back to politics where you can still sit down and play cards and have a Manhattan, in my case, an old-fashioned, and still be true to what your political positions are.
Sure. All right. I'm going to move through the questions. I'll go through a couple of them until we get to the end. And if we have extra time left, I'll go back through and ask the additional questions in each category. So district first priorities. What are your top 3 priorities for District 7, and why would you choose those?
Thank you. So I have been throughout these 20 full counties and partial of the other 6, so 26 counties, asking people that very question. And the groups ask the question themselves. So like when I first met you at the Farm Tech Days, in the tent where the Dems were, they were allowing people to put marbles in the jars on what are your most important issues. Everywhere I go, everyone you ask, healthcare is the number one concern as it relates to their personal quality of life. Affordability sort of encompasses housing, medical. It also includes things like groceries and even the gas to get you to and from work. And that's what affects people in the district and their house. But there's like this other lane. That's the lane for people in their house. There's also this other lane of defending democracy. There are people who share my concern that our democracy as we know it, the 250 years that we're celebrating right now of people leaving their country to get away from a king and to create a government where we, the people, have the power. And the first article in the Constitution says Congress shall have all of these enumerated powers. There are people who believe that that foundation is absolutely in danger. There are people who are concerned that ICE will be at the polling places this election. So while I absolutely want to take care of the lane to help people and in their daily life, there's also this other lane of the bigger picture of defending democracy.
Sure. I'm going to move on to my next category here. for the economy, jobs, and cost of living. What's driving higher costs for families here in Wisconsin, and what can Congress realistically do about it?
Sure. The number one thing is this unwarranted, unmanaged, unconstitutional war, where we're spending, the first days they were reporting $1 million a day. It's unconstitutional because Congress did not get the opportunity to vote on it. And once they did have an opportunity to vote, they said, you need to shut this down. And so we have soldiers who are over there that involved that need to be protected, but we need to get out of a war. This isn't our war. This isn't our issue. And that will make a huge difference and certainly allow for people to have more reasonable prices on their gas and groceries. Also, the tariffs. While there are some legitimate reasons to invoke tariffs, I haven't had a conversation with any business owner who appreciates the tariffs that this president has put in place. So those are two very easy things to accomplish. The third one is a bigger ask, and that's to cut the tax breaks that go to our billionaires and our trillionaire. If we can stop giving them breaks on their taxes and, for example, scrap the cap on Social Security so everybody's paying on every dollar earned, that would make a real difference on the funds that we would have for people who live in this district.
Sure. I'm going to move into my next category here of rural health and hospitals.
Yes.
Rural clinics and hospitals are struggling. What federal steps would you support to help stabilize them?
Yes. And struggling is a mild word. We have had closures in this district, and I was in disbelief to learn that even in Forest County, there's no OBGYN in the county. You have to travel across county lines to get that health care. I believe in the first and easiest thing, I believe, is to get back to where we were, to repeal the things that have happened under this administration, but not to stop there. I think because there's already a roadmap for the Affordable Care Act, that's where we start and then we grow from there. I can't imagine that any single politician could ever honestly say, my constituents don't need an improvement in our health care. And so I believe we should get to universal health care. Many people are for Medicare for all. There's also the public option. One of the things I have said in other forums is when I go to buy a car, I don't go to a lot and say, I want a white Jeep, 4-wheel drive, open top. I go in and say, I know I like a Jeep. I know I like 4-wheel drive. Tell me what you've got. What makes the most sense for my needs? My goal would be to be at the table with the other 434 people in the House of Representatives and figure out what can we actually pass that's consistent with the needs of my constituents. And anything from Medicare for all, public option, is a great improvement.
Sure. All right, I'm going to move into my next category of farming and agriculture. What do farmers in the District 7 tell you about their biggest challenges right now?
And so I'm going to tell you that I've learned that there's two lanes in farming. So we have our mom and pop farms and we have our corporate or consolidated farms. I think both lanes agree that having labor available is critical, and that has a lot to do with what's going on with immigration. And I won't spend too much time on that because I'm betting that's another topic. But I think having the affordability, the tariffs have made all their costs go up. The folks who are afraid of ICE have depleted the traditional labor. And then just being able to create that succession plan for mom and pops are really difficult. I did enjoy getting to talk to the young man who was the third generation farm owner at the Nelson Farm when I was in at the June Dairy Breakfast. And he was doing such a wonderful job greeting people. And I had an opportunity to ask him kind of off to the side, how are things going? What could your congressperson do for you? And he said, where would I start? But he was proud to say that banks had allowed him to get a loan in his own name to expand the farm. I think Congress, just like we do for student loans, we should allow for people to be educated and to get their start with federal funding at very low interest rates and then low payments until you start to be more profitable. Students get their money, they don't have to make payments during school, and then you can have the graduated payment plan. I think we need to offer that to our new or younger person taking over a generation farm, and I think we need to offer the same thing to our forest-based small businesses.
Sure. All right. Well, I'm going to move into my next category of infrastructure and broadband. Roads, bridges, water systems. What funding priorities matter most to the region?
I don't think that there's a single answer to that. And I'm, as much as I can get frustrated when I tell someone I'm going to be somewhere at a certain time, and then I haven't taken into consideration the construction that's going on in the roads, the good news is there's construction going on in the roads. So that fares well for the people in the district. Broadband. So we have the BEAD program, and so communities are going to be getting broadband based on the people who have won the contracts for the BEAD, which will bring broadband into the district. I had the opportunity on Wednesday to talk to a project manager for a team who won the BEAD contract in their community in Forest County. I was also at town of Germantown down in Juneau when they were first talking about pitching for the bid to get the BEAD contracting. So broadband is coming. There's already a program there, and I would want to make sure that the funding stays there. As far as water, I'm going to probably creep into one of the other areas. I think that comes under environmental protection. I was in law school. I studied environmental law. I was environmental law president for 2 years. We already have a Clean Water Act, a Clean Air Act, and an environmental protection agency. But administrations have cut away the funding and the personnel to enforce those laws, and to the EPA, who is the enforcer. We need to recommit and reaffirm those regulations and the people who can enforce them. And that will go a long way to take care of our natural resources in this district.
Sure. We got a little over 11 minutes here. We'll move right on through the questions here. I'm going to go into education and workforce. How do you strengthen technical colleges, apprenticeships, workforce training locally?
Thank you. That's a multifaceted question. I took your cue and we're running out of time, but let me explain. When we were at the Tech Days where I met you, I had another opportunity to talk to folks who are at the technical colleges in this district. There are folks in school, in high school, who are trying to figure out, am I going to go to a local technical college? Am I looking for a 4-year college? Am I going to do one or the other? Am I going to go into a trade? My dad, when he worked for Job Corps, those are students between ages 16 to 22 who aren't making it in school. And what they taught were what was recognized as union trades. One of the things I've said is whatever your path is, technical college, 4-year university, working on the next generation farm, working as an auto mechanic, just as the United States government provides student loans and grants to folks going to a 4-year university like I did, we should offer that to folks who are going into apprenticeships or technical schools, and make that affordable for folks. I also believe that there is room for some loan forgiveness. I also believe if you're a farmer and you use that loan, if you're using federal funding and we have a program where we provide food, those farmers should be provided the first contract for providing the food that's used, the produce and the milk that's used in our federal institutions. just invest in the future at the beginning rather than having funds available for disasters. We still need to have that if Mother Nature is cruel to a farmer, but I believe in investing in folks to help boost them into these programs. And it applies to professionals too. The State Bar of Wisconsin has already invested in, they have programs to support employers as well as students who will come to rural communities. I think our medical professionals need to do the same thing so that we could get more doctors and nurses and professionals here by supporting folks who hire them and the students who will choose to come to rural communities.
Sure. So my next question here is we're going to go into public safety and border policies. How should we support local law enforcement while protecting civil liberties?
That can and should be done. As a city attorney, I worked with my police officers, and working and building respect in your community is an important thing. You know, picking up the basketball and playing basketball with the kids when you see them out there. At the powwow that I was just at, they had a game of tag between law enforcement and the kids who were there. So starting with children so that they learn that those are peace officers, that they're people who help us, is a good thing. I can't talk about this and not talk about ICE. Like, I just happened to be in Minnesota the day that Alex Preddy was murdered. I had an opportunity to talk to protesters, police, and the press. It is gut-wrenching to be a United States citizen and see a president give ICE agents who are not properly trained, because this president thinks they only need 47 days of training because he's the 47th president. And we have ICE agents who are not honoring due process, who are not honoring a citizen's First Amendment right to assemble, First Amendment right to speech, Second Amendment right to a concealed carry. Instead, we have agents who are not properly authorized, using warrants that are not signed by a judge, and they are violating Fourth Amendment rights by arresting and seizing people. They are offending Fourth Amendment rights to unreasonable search and seizures. That's what I said when I said our democracy is under attack. And so we have to demand that law enforcement follows the rules and creates that community connection so that people will respect them, and they will respect them if they follow the rules. And that's something that I did when I was city attorney. That's what I did when I was a public defender, was demand that law enforcement follow the rules. My experience as a lawyer has allowed me to work very closely with law enforcement, and I would continue to do so as a congresswoman.
Sure. I'm going to skip a few here and go into probably the one thing is going to be energy and environment here. What's your stance on energy, fossil fuels, nuclear, renewable? What mix makes sense?
Yeah, we have got to learn to become less dependent on fossil fuels because, you know, when I had the opportunity to study in England, I studied comparative legal systems to learn about how we got to where we are. I remember going into a pub and this guy about my age said, "You're an American," which was obvious from what I was wearing. And he said, "All you want is oil, oil, oil." That is the perception. I mean, I came back and said, "No, actually, I came here. I heard pubs have beer. But if you want to talk about politics, I will." But we need to be less dependent on oil because our allies see us as being very greedy. And in this district, we have so many natural resources that we can rely on to help provide that energy from, solar. And we can do that without impeding on farms. And, hydro, we have lots of water available to us to help generate that kind of energy. And also our timber industry, the folks who rely on being able to sell the logs that they cut in our forests, are in trouble because the mills are closing. They have the ability to create biomass from the products that in the woods. And that would make so much sense if we're going to bring in data centers. Let's require them to have solar panels at the top of their buildings, and let's require them to be responsible for all the costs for the energy they're going to use. And let's include things like biomass to help give a boost to our timber industry.
Sure. We got just under 5 minutes here. We're going to go through a few real quick here. So leadership, transparency, representation. How will you stay accessible to, for town halls, office hours, being in the district?
Yes. So as a lawyer that practices in all 72 counties of the state of Wisconsin, I've learned how to master the Zoom. And so holding a town hall, you can reach a huge audience in a very easily managed manner. I would absolutely be coming to every county in the state, or in the district, sorry. And one of the things that I have already pitched is that I want an app so that verified constituents can chime in when I have a vote coming in to provide their yes or no answer, and to hold me accountable if I don't vote with the majority of the responses that come in. If I don't, I will have an explanation, but I will be available for town halls. I will be available for Zooms. I like to see people's faces rather than phone calls. Holding me accountable. When I was interviewed by WJFW last week for our forum, I said, hold me accountable. I will be accountable. That is a very important aspect of being a representative.
All right, we're at 3 minutes. I'm going to ask 2 more questions, and the last one will be your chance to throw your pitch there. So the second to the last question, what do you want people to say about you at the end of this campaign, even if they didn't vote for you?
She took care of us. She understood what we needed, and she got us results.
All right. So my last question here, why should someone decide to trust you with this job?
Yes. I think you shouldn't rely on what I tell you to trust. I think you can consider that judges in 2 counties saw me as being trustworthy. They entrusted me with making decisions in the best interest of children. I think consider my clients who entrust me with things as important as their children, their families, their house, their money. I have built a successful 30-year career in representing the best interest in children and families who have trusted me to do so. They refer more clients to me. The people who have already allowed me to represent them continue to give referrals and good comments. Allow me to give you that same level of 30 years of lawyering and advocacy for what's best for children and families without paying a retainer or getting a legal bill. I think I can flip this district. First, Susan Crawford showed the world our elections are not for sale. It is not about how much money you raise. And second, Chris Taylor flipped this district from a ruby red district to a district that voted for a progressive woman. They are my lady lawyer leaders who have paved the way for me to flip this district.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for this opportunity. It's 26 districts, so anybody who can help send the message, greatly appreciated.
Yep, and we wish you good luck on this fall here. It's going to come up very quickly.
Very quickly, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. This interview is part of Marshall Broadcasting's ongoing effort to provide the community with general information about candidates running for office. Marshall Broadcasting does not endorse any candidate, political parties, or ballot positions. Participation in this program does not imply endorsement, Marshall Broadcasting, the City of Marshfield, or its staff. To watch this program again or other get-to-know programs, check out marshfieldbroadcasting.com and throughout all of our streaming platforms. Until next time, we'll see you on Get to Know.